In the summer of 1764, 14-year-old Jean Boulet would wake up early every morning. She'd tend to her flock of sheep by herself, walk them to graze on fresh pastures just outside of her village of Les Houbacs in the hills of Gevaudan, a region of southern France. Then she would return home in the afternoon. But June 30th was not a typical day for the Boulet family. It was a day filled with tragedy. Young Jean would never come home that afternoon. Jean's family and a few villagers went out looking for her, eventually succeeding, but it was too late. When they found her dead body, it was partially eaten, mutilated at the neck and face. She was buried the next day. The official record from her local parish included this short but chilling note, quote, "On the 1st of July, 1764, was buried Jean Boulet, aged 14 years, devoured by the ferocious beast which has appeared in the Gevaudan." The record was followed by a footnote, buried without sacraments, because the poor girl wasn't able to give a final confession before being mauled to death. This stone-cold entry in the parish register marked the first known victim of the beast of Gevaudan, a large wolf-like cryptid creature who hunted humans for sport. It would strike again and again and again. Word quickly spread from the rural region outward to nearby villages and towns about, quote, beasts that devoured the cheeks of boys, that sought out solitary people, and weighed around 100 pounds with the head, the teeth, and the paws showing extraordinary strength. News of the growing number of gruesome killings kept Gevaudan children indoors. It led to impromptu and organized hunts to kill the elusive creature. Word even reached the court of King Louis XV in the Palace of Versailles, nearly 400 miles away. He put a bounty on the beast, attracting the best hunters in France to take their best shot. Some got close, some even claimed they succeeded, but when all was said and done, the beast terrorized the people of Gevaudan for 3 very long years, maiming and killing more than 100 people in the region, causing many men, women, and children to be buried, as had Jean Boulet, without sacraments. The beast would leave its mark well past the 18th century because, like all cryptids, debate lingered on whether or not this man-eating creature even existed. As the famed scientist Carl Sagan would say, quote, "Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence," and parish registers and eyewitness accounts weren't enough for the doubters. Most skeptics then and now believe the attacks were carried out by familiar animals, like overly aggressive wolves. Another theory is that the beast was some sort of exotic mammal that had been smuggled from Africa and escaped during its journey. A lesser adopted, but even more macabre theory is that these hundreds of deaths were carried out by the world's most dangerous predator, man. But what if the beast of Gevaudan was real? I mean, species go extinct and are discovered all the time. In late 2025, a new velvety species of mole was found in the mountains of Vietnam, for example. Thankfully, there are no maulings currently associated with the velvet mole that we know of. And as we continue our coverage of Halloween-appropriate topics over at Wendigoon, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about a monster under the bed. Or in this case, a beast in the woods that rips out the throats of young, lone, unsuspecting villagers. But you know, all the same over here. So hello everybody, today we're talking about the Beast of Gevaudan. This is one of the oldest cryptid stories on record, and it has some of the most interesting history around it. And it's like the first werewolf. How do I not cover it for Halloween? Also, this story is set in France, so apologies to people who care how I pronounce things. I mean, it's not like there's a thing that exists that can teach me to speak another language. A thing like today's sponsor, Babbel. One day, I'd like to see the world outside of America, and it'd be nice to interact with the world while I'm there. Even now, doing research for topics outside of the States, it would be nice to understand some of it without having to consult Google. Well, thankfully, Babbel has me covered, since it's an award-winning app that makes learning a new language simple and effective. You can learn a variety of languages, from Spanish to French to German to Italian to Russian, the list goes on. And Babbel courses are created by over 200 language experts. It's like having a private tutor in your pocket. And one of the coolest things to me about Babbel is how they let you interact with the language. I mean, the reason you're so fluent in your native tongue is because you were around it. You heard it spoken naturally. Well, Babbel lets you listen to podcasts and forms of entertainment in the language you're trying to learn. It helps you practice the languages conversationally and gives you real-time feedback to track your progress. Babbel has over 25 million subscriptions sold, and 92% of users improved their proficiency level in just 2 months. Imagine all the dumb stuff you've been doing the past 2 months. Now imagine you could speak Italian in that time. I took a year of German in high school, so I decided to start brushing up there. And now thanks to Babbel, I can say stuff like, Wo ist das Badezimmer? Mein Hut, der hat drei Ecken. Und ich bin ein dummer Amerikaner. So to start speaking a new language in as little as 3 weeks, head to the link in the description or go to babbel.com/wendigang to get 55% off your subscription. That is right, 55% off. Join the millions of Babbel learners breaking the language barrier every day at babbel.com/wendigang to get in on this incredible offer today. Thank you all for watching the ad. Thank you to Babbel for sponsoring the channel. We are now back to the video. We are going to go ahead and get into it, but as always, thank you for watching. The people of the rural region of Gevaudan were no strangers to wolves. In the mid-1700s, this part of central southern France was, as J. Smith, a historian and author of Monsters of the Gevaudan, The Making of a Beast, puts it, quote, a remote, isolated backwater where the forces of nature had not been fully tamed and the forest were indeed enchanted. While his use of the word enchanting is interesting, given he's talking about a bloodthirsty creature that roams the lands and eats children, his overall point is that the geography of Gevaudan was wild. Rural doesn't mean beautiful pastoral farmland in this case. It means that humans barely even existed here. Right in the thick of the Margeride Mountains, the area was heavily wooded with dense forests, there were undammed rivers and streams, and it was filled with wildlife. Think less of a farm, more like Lewis, Clark, and Sacagawea exploring Northwest America in the 1800s. In other words, it was a region where wolves thrived. And because wolves were common in this part of the world, wolf attacks were also fairly commonplace, although these were mostly against livestock and other small animals. Having said that, wolf attacks on humans, say a lone traveler or child tending to a flock of sheep, were not unprecedented. Which is what makes it odd that whoever logged Jean Boulet's cause of death had written ferocious beast, or in another translation, unknown beast, instead of just killed by a wolf. Because Gevaudans knew wolves, they knew their habits, and most importantly, they knew what it looked like when a wolf attacked their cattle and occasionally even their people. And whatever this was, they didn't think it was that. Now, in spite of the strange description, no one jumped to any wild conclusions after Boulet's death right away. But then there was another incident. A 14-year-old girl was attacked near the hamlet of Maméjean. Like the first victim, she was also mauled to death. No more than a few weeks later, there was a third attack. A pattern was starting to emerge and people started to notice. One concerned letter written to a government official at the time said, quote, there have been 3 deaths so far. The last was a young boy, a cowherd, near Lagana. By the end of that summer, news of the horrific deaths of these women and children, and the beasts that stalked them, traveled through the region. And it wasn't just the cause of death that made the rounds. Rumors of the predator's unusual appearance spread as well. The beast was said to attack during the day, and witnesses had been given a decent look at the predator. According to journalist Joseph A. Williams, the consensus was that, whatever it was, quote, something other than a typical wolf. It was as large as a calf or sometimes horse. Its coat was reddish-gray with a long, strong panther-like tail. The head and legs were short-haired and the color of a deer. It had black stripe on its back and talons on its feet. One person's eyewitness account described the beast's strange roar. It sounded, quote, more like a horse neighing than a wolf howling. Still, local authorities were not ready to declare a state of beastly emergency. Many felt this had to be nothing more than a particularly large wolf, or even a whole pack of wolves. Since the survivors and witnesses at this point were mostly women and children, and in a rather uneducated region of France, police felt like their exaggerated, larger-than-life descriptions were nothing more than hysterics. Which, yeah, if I saw some dude's head get ripped off by a wolf the size of a cow that sounded like a horse, I would also be hysterical. But the beast continued its reign of terror well past the summer, spanning a nearly 60-mile radius, attacking, quote, several times in one day or successive days. The reports piled up. From the words of a self-described expert and a descendant of the region, quote, they put like 4 French towns in this quote just to mess with me. I know they did. I can't prove it, but the writer did that. I know what you did, Greg. Coming for you. 3 15-year-old boys from Chez-la-Lavec, a woman from Arzons, a little girl from Thor, and a shepherd from Chaux-de-Roc are found dead in an open country. Their bodies are terribly mutilated and are barely recognizable. In September, a girl from... they put even more quotes in this one. They're trying to kill me. They knew the French would be watching this. They knew they'd be mad. In September, a girl from Rockla, a man from Chouania, a woman from Apchy disappear. Their remains and their rags are found scattered in open country and in woods. On October 8th, a young man from Putra returns home, terrified, half dead. He has met the beast in an orchard and it slashed his scalp and his chest. 2 days later, the forehead of a 13-year-old child is slashed and his scalp ripped off. On October 19th, a 20-year-old maiden is found horribly torn to pieces around San Elvan. The beast hammered at her, drank her blood, and ate her guts. Which, two things. For one, I feel that witnesses that are described as hysteric have a right to be. And two, keep in mind the author at the beginning of this section referred to these woods as enchanting. The common sense crowd could not deny that the frequency of the human killings was unprecedented. And unlike wolf attacks, when a shepherd or farmer was attacked by the beast, his cattle, sheep, and goats remained unharmed. Another odd fact that was difficult to ignore was that the beast wasn't even eating most of its victims. The vast majority were only partially consumed or not eaten at all. Regular, everyday, non-cryptid wolves are opportunistic hunters. They attack their prey and eat them for sustenance. This is especially true for humans, which most predators will avoid unless they're threatened or hungry to the point of desperation. This string of deaths felt like killing for the sake of killing. And then there was the pure savagery of the attacks. Victims were found with their throats torn out or heads gnawed off. One report said that the beast removed the victim's head and drank all of her blood. Another account printed that the beast drinks their blood, cuts off their heads, and carries them off. A witness account described a cracked skull lying on the ground that was found several feet away from its body. If that's a wolf, it's a species unlike anything we've ever known about and haven't discovered in the hundreds of years since. And if we do discover it, we should kill it immediately, a lot. In the fall of 1764, some of the non-believers began to come around. Rather than deny accounts of the beast, they spread word of its existence further and wider. The regions surrounding Gevaudan were officially on alert. Parents were urged to keep their children indoors. Wanted posters went up, emphasizing the creature's penchant for decapitation. Local parishes, who acted as leaders of smaller communities, began warning their parishioners about a man-eating predator. Whether it was an opportunistic tactic or born from genuine belief, priests and parish leaders used the mass hysteria as an opportunity to give alarming sermons about the beast being sent to earth to punish sinners. One bishop even proclaimed, quote, "A scourge has appeared. The teeth of wild beasts have been armed against men. The faithful must do penance." And no doubt invoking a passage from Leviticus, quote, "I will also send wild beasts among you, which shall rob you of your children." In other words, the beast is here for punishment, so the sinners better start praying. But thoughts and prayers were not enough for a government official named Etienne Lafont. Lafont didn't necessarily care if the beast was natural or supernatural, he just wanted to kill it. He called for the first official effort to kill the beast and enlisted Captain Jean-Baptiste Duhamel to lead a region-wide hunt, using official military tactics and poison bait. Duhamel even enlisted volunteers to dress up as peasant women to attract the beast. So yes, a government official in France used the military to dress men up in corsets and send them out into the woods to lure in a werewolf. There's truly nothing God can do to us that we haven't done to ourselves. Duhamel even put up a financial reward for anyone who killed the beast, a typical year's salary for working men. Some sources say that over the course of a few months, more than 30,000 men volunteered to put their lives at risk for the safety of their region, or more than likely for the reward. Perhaps he needed to instill a healthy fear into his men, but unlike Lafont, Duhamel didn't mince words about what his newfound troops were up against. Quote, "You will undoubtedly think, like I do, that this is a monster, the father of which is a lion. What its mother was remains to be seen." Which, that's just a funny quote, to be like, we're pretty sure dad's a lion, mom, it's in the air. Despite the manpower, killing the beast didn't prove to be an easy task. But on October 8th, Duhamel's effort had its biggest break. Just hours after a 15-year-old boy was mauled to death, a few of the volunteer hunters spotted the beast stalking a herdsman near the Chateau de la Boime, a major castle in the region sometimes referred to as the Versailles of Gevaudan. They trailed it into the nearby woods, then flushed it out into the open where several hunters ambushed the beast with a volley of musket fire. They hit it. The beast fell to the ground, but not for long. Before they could approach, the beast rose up and scurried off into the woods. The large-scale organized effort and the hunters cosplaying as peasant women ultimately did not find success, but it wasn't entirely a failure. All of this was happening right in the midst of the Enlightenment period, a European intellectual and cultural movement built around reason, logic, and science rather than blindly following religious tradition. The church hated it. People who hated the church loved it. Without getting too deep into it, one of the most important outcomes of the Enlightenment was that the literacy rates were increasing exponentially. This meant France's publishing industry was also experiencing a boom. However, political news was still largely being censored by King Louis XV, so newspapers had to find interesting and entertaining stories to bolster subscriptions that weren't political. Well, as you've probably put two and two together, a deadly gargantuan predator who hunts women and children that can survive a wall of bullets? The Beast of Gevaudan was both interesting and entertaining, so naturally it was perfect for papers of the time. A man named Francois Morenes seemed to grasp exactly what the people wanted at the time, and still do, sensationalist true crime. Which, don't know anyone who would push stories like that. He was the creator and editor of the Courrier de Vinien and began experimenting with a new type of journalism called faits divers, which translates to miscellaneous facts. Much like a crime blotter in a small town paper, he found and printed incidents from nearby French villages. Or, the earliest recorded incidents of the Nextdoor app. When Francois started reporting on Gevaudan and its elusive beast, the story took on a life of its own. He described the rural region as a theater of war and described the creature using statements like, quote, ferocious beast of unknown origin emerging from who knows where. He compared it to the giants and hydras of Greek mythology, which, yes, giants, and told his readers that it could leap great distances, vanish, and reappear as it wanted. Francois would publish almost 100 articles about Gevaudan and its beast by the end of 1764. He was obsessed, and soon, so were the people of France. Papers in Paris picked up on the news, which then spread all over the country, propelling the beast from local lore into national legend. By the start of 1765, the grim-like fairy tale had become a worldwide phenomenon, with readers in Brussels, Belgium, and even Boston, Massachusetts becoming engrossed. And like a game of telephone, as the stories got passed around, the original description of the beast became greatly varied and somehow even more supernatural. The beast would walk on its hind legs. It had fire in its eyes. It could come back from the dead. I don't know why a werewolf wasn't enough for these people. I don't know why it also had to be like a two-legged demon werewolf, but whatever. Many French illustrations depict the goriness of the attacks and kept the beast more or less in wolf form, sometimes with the massive creature standing over the discarded bones and decapitated bodies of its child victims. But then as you move away from France, the depictions get more creative. One image showed the beast a semi-erect reptilian lion. A German illustration depicted the beast less like a wolf, more of a kangaroo-like creature attacking a traveler, biting his neck as a man runs away in the distance. Another picture was one bright red cloak away from being an M. Night Shyamalan movie. For King Louis XV, this had started to become a matter of national concern, or more accurately, for Louis's ego. Some newspapers criticized the king, saying he was incapable of catching the killer. Some took it a step further, accusing the king of being incapable of protecting his own citizens. After hearing about the heroics of a brave group of children no older than 12 years old that survived an attack, he had enough. Louis put a price on the beast head and sent his royal hunters on a search and destroy mission. First up was a pseudo-celebrity father-son duo, the Denuvals, who claimed to have killed 1,200 wolves in their lifetime. They journeyed to Gevaudan on February the 17th with 8 of their finest bloodhounds. Within 24 hours of hunting, they had their first lead. A story was printed about a horse-drawn carriage that was traveling on an isolated path when out of nowhere, the beast leapt on its hind legs, knocking the footmen off the carriage and jumping through the inside of it. It's unclear from the historical text whether the traveler survived, but the article noted that the beast left behind an odor so foul and rank that the carriage had to be burned and its ashes buried deep in the ground. However, the Denuvals, who did not have the ability to vanish and reappear wherever they wanted, could not catch up with it. They never saw the beast again and left Gevaudan unsuccessful. Returning empty-handed, King Louis sent tens of thousands of professional hunters into Gevaudan over the course of a year. But the beast remained elusive, alive and free, continuing to claim victims all the while. But as poorly as the futility reflected on Louis, nothing was worse for his reputation than the young village girl with no military training who nearly showed up the king's armies of royal hunting squads. In a sworn testimony recorded on August 11th, 1765, 19-year-old Marie-Jeanne Vallée was on her way to a farm near her home with her sister. As she was crossing a river through a small wooded area, she turned to see, quote, an unusually large dog with enormous claws and fangs behind her. Clearly, Marie had heard about the beast and, knowing she would be a prime target, ready to defend herself with the homemade spear she had fashioned out of an old bayonet and a pole. The beast pounced, and Marie thrust the spear forward, impaling the monster in the chest. Like every other previous attempt to bring it down, the beast did not die, rolling off into the water and making its escape. But this was enough to secure her legend. From this moment onward, Marie was known for the rest of her life as the Maid of Gevaudan. So that's cool, right? Young girl gets known as a warrior of the village because she stabbed the beast. I mean, not really worth the hundreds, apparently, of bodies that were stacking up in the midst of this, but good for her. Not wanting, perhaps, to let a young girl take the mantle of the one who came closest to slaying the beast, King Louis sent his best man to Gevaudan to finish the job, Francois Antoine Lord de Bouturne, lieutenant of the hunts of His Majesty, which is the fancy French way of saying guy that hunts stuff a lot. The Parisian Illustrated Review had this to say of Louis and Antoine, quote, the king must have been fully alive to the distress of Gevaudan to be willing to separate himself, even temporarily, from his best companion of the chase. That is the most stuck-up way I've ever referred to. Oh my gosh. It must be bad if he's willing to separate himself from his best companion. The thought of the king not hunting for like 2 minutes. What will he do? Everything I learned about the French is against my will. The king's official gun bearer struck quickly. Quote, the 21st of September, 1765, Antoine met the beast in the woods of Pumiere, belonging to the royal abbey of Chaise, near these names, near Langeac, and shot the animal in the right flank. Antoine and the terrible beast rolled together upon the ground, but it was a guard of the Duke of Orleans named Reynold who killed it. This time, the beast did not get up. According to official royal reports, the beast of Gevaudan was dead. Its body was stuffed and transported to Versailles for verification, insisting that his role in capturing the beast was proof of his ability to indeed protect his people. King Louis had the taxidermy trophy wheeled out and prominently displayed for everyone to see. The display attracted a great number of people who wanted to catch a glimpse of the infamous giant man-eating predator, but all of them left disappointed. This beast didn't seem like a beast at all. It wasn't even large. From the reports, they were looking at an average-sized wolf. But the king proclaimed the beast of Gevaudan was dead. He gave Antoine a medal, his money, and a bunch of horses as his reward. The region of Gevaudan bought in and gave gratitude. The reign of terror was finally over. The beast was dead. The people of France could finally rest easy and traverse the region in peace. Or at least that's what they thought for like 5 minutes. Because a mere 3 months later, quote, a young girl was devoured and a young man of Poulac was attacked and wounded. So yeah, I don't think that one very average wolf was doing all of this. I mean, maybe he was just really good at it. Gevaudans once again found themselves in a state of terror, and between 1766 and 1767, another 30 to 35 people were killed by the beast. There would be no royal intervention this time. Some speculated that this beast was not the original beast. Perhaps this one was its mate, an offspring, or a different creature of the same monstrous species. But most people believe that the original beast had never been caught to begin with, because once again, people that believed in the beast did not think it was just a normal wolf. Despite the deaths bearing similarities, regional authorities now had political relationships to consider. They didn't want to recognize these attacks as the beast, as doing so would be like spitting in the face of the king, which, as French history goes, is not usually the best idea. So even though the death toll rose, the royal court was off the project. No, the beast cannot be out there because that guy says it's not out there. So you're making it up. More local hunts were organized. Thousands of non-man-eating wolves were killed out of precaution or mistake. But it wasn't until June 19th of 1767, almost exactly 3 years to the day of Jean Boulet's death, that the region of Gevaudan actually got the peace they wanted. Jean Chastel was a local farmer. He was involved in the earlier efforts to hunt down the monster and had volunteered to assist Francois Antoine. But during the official royal hunt, Antoine had Jean thrown in jail after he accidentally led some of the out-of-town hunters into a bog, which is a funny thing to get thrown in jail for. King Louis, super highfalutin, like huntsman, comes to the village and you accidentally get mud on some of his guys' uniforms and he's like, oh, off to prison, go. I know it's not what he would be wearing, but I imagine him in like the powdered wig and like he has a handkerchief. Chastel would get the last laugh though, because he is now remembered as the man who took down the beast. Now, there aren't many details about the final kill, just that Chastel allegedly located the beast in the woods and shot it, which probably sounds anticlimactic for everyone involved. But other hunters who saw the predator remarked that they had never seen anything like it before. Some claim that Chastel even loaded his musket with a silver bullet made from a coin that depicted the Virgin Mary. Now, this is likely an embellishment that sounded good for story time, but one can never be too sure. And also, that's really, really cool. So I choose to believe it's a fact. It's a fact. I just decided it. A guy that was thrown in jail by the king's huntsman comes back and melts a silver image of Mary to shoot at the devil dog. That's great. A surgeon named Boulanger performed the autopsy. He noted that the animal was certainly a canid, a carnivorous mammal with a slender, long-legged body, long muzzle, and bushy tail, a family that includes dogs, jackals, coyotes, foxes, and yes, wolves. But this particular animal weighed in at 109 pounds. It had a massive head and a strangely flexible skeleton. Its jaws were powerful, and its teeth were all sharper than normal, and it had deep, yellow eyes. The most disturbing part, when he sliced open its stomach, Boulanger found, along with animal entrails and the bones of sheep, the remains of a young child, no older than 10. Despite all of this, the doctor couldn't say with 100% certainty what this creature was. He left the post-mortem examination inconclusive, neither wolf nor supernatural beast. The official statement in the autopsy was, quote, "This animal which seemed to us to be a wolf, but extraordinary and very different by its figure and its proportions from the wolves that one sees in this country." Like the first time around, this beast was taxidermied and sent to Versailles for verification, with Chastel accompanying it. Only this time, King Louis did not receive it. He never had a public viewing and had it buried before anyone else could see it. Which, that's what did it for me. Like, all of the French jokes up until this point were just funny, but not anymore. Are you telling me that this guy might have actually killed a werewolf, or the closest thing we've ever had to one, a 109-pound wolf cat lion thing, and he sent it to the king, and the king didn't like it because he liked the one his dude killed better, which is once again a normal wolf, so he buries it? He just gets I'm actually mad. Are you telling me there's a taxidermied werewolf somewhere in France right now? It's under the ground somewhere. If someone doesn't bring me that wolf. But unlike the previous supposed slaying of the beast, the killings in Gevaudan stopped this time, and the partially digested boy truly was the last recorded victim of the dreaded animal. King Louis might not have rejoiced, but the people of Gevaudan certainly did. They were finally at peace. So with that, the story of the beast itself is over. But as I mentioned at the beginning, questions of the beast origins and lore persisted. I mean, they're still debated to this day. There was even an official investigation in 2009, 250 years later. At the time of the killings, the local Gevaudans believed it was something supernatural. If not a beast, then a shapeshifter or werewolf perhaps. Priests claimed it was a physical manifestation of the wrath of God. But it was the enlightened crowd who had it all figured out. Philosopher Immanuel Kant blamed the common country folk of Gevaudan for misleading everyone and creating the mass hysteria at the time. Then and now, the leading theory is that the villagers were primitive and therefore susceptible to perpetuating what was clearly a superstition. Because someone told them there was a monster, they believed it, too easily scared to see it was merely a wolf, especially when the person scaring them was behind a pulpit. And if it was entirely made up or came from some fact, we may never know. It's fun to speculate on the supernatural, but we know that tall tales traveled well during this time period, so it's quite possible that the legend of the beast superseded a simple reality. Then again, there's reason to doubt the rational explanation, starting with the prevalence of the very creature the beast is accused of being: wolves. As mentioned earlier, France was filled with wolves around this time. There were roughly 10 to 20,000 wolves around the country, with approximately 9,000 reports of wolf attacks against humans between the 17th and 19th century. Think of the last time you've heard of 9,000 people getting attacked by anything, aside from, of course, other people. That's my cool political take for this video. Now, compared to population and time, these attacks were rare, but they weren't unprecedented. So for any attacks to truly stand out meant that it had to be notable in some way. And given the popularity of the stories of the beast around France and the world, you would think everyone would have had their own Beast of Gevaudan in their hometown, following every attack of this kind. But all the accounts of these especially grisly and gruesome attacks seem to generate from this region and this region alone. Add in the fact that stories of these deaths stopped all at once and immediately upon the slaying of a creature which the autopsy couldn't indisputably identify as such. Maybe there's something to the legends after all. Those who believe that the beast was a wolf are split into two groups. One side thinks it was one singular, really big wolf. Skeptics of this theory point to the large death toll, saying that it's hard to believe one wolf could be that prolific for that long. The other side say it was a large pack of wolves. Large doesn't refer to the quantity here, it refers to the immense physical size of each member of the pack. The pack could have been less than a dozen. This would account for the massive death toll, as well as the dozens of eyewitness accounts of seeing an especially large wolf. But if it was a pack of wolves, why would the killings mysteriously stop after Chaytel killed the one? Another common explanation is that the beast was an exotic animal that escaped from a circus, a traveling zoo, or during transport of some sort. Duhamel and Lafont's description literally used the words lion and hyena, while others gave descriptions that could be construed as either animal. Like when the one guy said it was the size of a calf and sounded more like a horse. That could be a hyena to someone that, has never seen a hyena before. This could be why the local Gevaudans didn't cry wolf right away. Like a bad deed in Vegas, most people in the French countryside don't leave the French countryside. They knew wolves, but other animals may have been foreign to them. To someone with a limited worldview, seeing a lion or hyena is equivalent to seeing a beast, so how could they know any different? Now, doubters of this theory will say that, like wolves, both lions and hyenas don't prey on humans, especially not this many humans all at once. But proponents of this theory point to the famous Tsavo man-eaters, a pair of lions in the Tsavo region of Kenya who killed dozens, if not hundreds of people in 1898, mostly construction workers, building a railway through their habitat. In addition to this theory, the 60-mile radius of the Beast of Gevaudan matches up with the range of territory that lions roam. The final theory is that the beast was no wild animal at all, but a man. A brutal murderer on a one-of-a-kind killing spree, disfiguring faces and cutting off heads and leaving them for dead. Other witness accounts claim the beast was accompanied by a human, which led some to theorize that an individual had trained some kind of animal to attack on command. Then, this person was thought to have spread the superstition of the beast as cover for his serial killings. But what kind of lunatic would do that? I say in a manner as if I'm loading a question. Well, that would be Jean Chaytel, the beast slayer himself, the one who got the final glory and who was etched into the history books as the hero. According to this theory, Chaytel would have used the animal to do his bidding, then turned on it once it had finally served its purpose. Be like Scooby-Doo if Shaggy was the villain and killed Scooby at the end. It's actually nothing like Scooby-Doo. The offshoots of this theory are even darker and wider. Some have speculated that one of Chaytel's sons was the serial killer and the beast was the elder Chaytel's way of covering up for him. There's also the theory that Chaytel's son was raising a hyena and some sort of mastiff, a large breed of dogs, and somehow was able to mate one of these animals with a female wolf who gave offspring. Which, saying all of that out loud, I think it just being a demon is far simpler. Also feel this is like how other countries would take depictions of the beast and make it like more complicated, and it was two-legged and it breathed fire and stuff like that. Like, can't we just have a werewolf? I'm not even saying it's got to be supernatural or a monster, just like there were dire wolves, right? Dire wolves were a big wolf breed that went extinct until we brought them back recently with means outside of the realm of my understanding or gods. But like there were big wolf species that went extinct. What if there was just a few running around France, right? That's easier than this guy's son getting a mastiff to mate with a wolf, and then which sounds very dangerous and then, for you and the mastiff, and then training those to kill people on command, and then you kill. That seems like a lot of steps. Which that sentiment sums up the story of the Beast of Gevaudan and part of what's made it so timeless. The entire saga basically started with one piece of historical documentation of a death, which snowballed thanks to some key eyewitness accounts, and then leapt exponentially after the French press, which by French press, I mean French journalists, not the thing that makes coffee, took what was available and ran with it. At this point, it's far too late to undo all of the lore that's been spun after the inception, especially considering all of the weird politics and egos that were wrapped into the capture of the beast. But then again, why would you want to do that? Everything from stories around the campfire to poems and songs and books and a season arc within MTV's Teen Wolf can trace its origins back to the legendary beast. Not only is it thought by some to be the first true cryptid, it served as the foundational blueprint of the modern werewolf. The idea of a rampaging wolf demon in the woods stalking children is obviously reminiscent of earlier fairy tales like Little Red Riding Hood, and the origins of a silver bullet being the only way to kill a creature obviously come from the legends of Jean Chatel's famous takedown. Much like Vlad the Impaler and Dracula, the Beast of Gevaudan was, and remains, an important figure in the foundations of modern-day horror lore. Okay. Sadly, if you visit modern-day Lozère, France, what used to be the region of Gevaudan, chances are you won't see much in terms of wolves, which is probably beneficial if you live there. In the 1930s, France made a concerted effort to eliminate their wolf population using poison, perhaps having something to do with lingering fears of the legendary beast, or more than likely they had a lot left over from the war. But Gevaudan, now hundreds of years removed from the terror, is owning the motif. Monuments and statues pay homage to the creature, symbolic figures for the residents, and a tourist attraction for visitors. The most famous of these being the bronze statue of the Maid of Gevaudan. Even the official France tourism website offers a detailed guide on how to, quote, follow in the footsteps of the beast, concluding with, the truth about this beast, whatever it is, will certainly never be fully unveiled, but the legend of the Beast of Gevaudan will, without a doubt, keep on mesmerizing. And that is the only time in this video that I will agree with the French. And that concludes the story of the Beast of Gevaudan. I've heard about this story for a long time. I would always hear people talk about it in relation to cryptids as the one that has a lot of evidence. And I guess by that they mean the autopsy, or there's like a single account of someone killing it. Because if you take cryptids like Bigfoot or like old vampire legends and stuff, there's never like coherence to the myth, right? It's always like, oh, well, this guy says he killed it, or this guy says he saw one and stuff. But the fact that the Beast of Gevaudan has like a definitive timeline and a definitive beginning and end is interesting. I also think it's one of the more likely to exist cryptids, right? Because there have been animals that have been believed to be cryptids that have turned out to be real. Like the coelacanth, for example, was believed for years to be a completely extinct species of bony fish, and then they just popped up again. I believe it was either off the coast of South Africa or South America. But yeah, that was something we thought was extinct for a long time that just showed back up. So who's to say there wasn't like a remnant offshoot of canine families that were like a larger wolf breed that just existed in the forests of France and then were hunted out around this time. Or it was a hellhound. Whatever you want to believe, I think it's cool, and I think you're cool for sticking around, and we just want to say thank you for watching. I think we're going to try to squeeze in one more Halloween video before the season's over, but thank you guys so much for the support you've shown so far. We were really excited to get a bunch of videos up for the spooky season, and your guys' support means the world. Again, I know I've talked about it before, but it's really cool to put together a team and then make stuff and see if you guys are going to be here when it happens every time you guys show up, and I can't tell you how much that means to me. Thank you. Some more content on the way, cool stuff planned for Wendigoon and Creepcast as well, and thank you guys for the support you show over there. Everyone who made this video possible will be credited in the description, so be sure to show them some love. I know they appreciate it, and I believe that should do it for now, but before I go, we just want to say thank you for watching. We hope that you enjoyed, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye. You know, what's funny about these cryptid stories is like, if I was in a small town in France, and it's not like you have the internet or anything to keep you busy, and I heard people were freaking out over a wolf walking around killing people, I 100% would put on a wolf pelt and go run by houses in the middle of the night. And then like 300 years later, someone's reading the reports like, this idiot said he saw a wolf on 2 legs. Well, little do you know that guy did, and it was me.